participating. Okay, I think we have critical mass. We're going to get started here. So welcome everyone to the 4th of 9 virtual regional workshops for advancing 30 by 30 and climate smart lands. And today we are in the Sierra Nevada region. We're excited to have you join us, and we look forward to collaborating with you today. My name is Eric Ponsley. I'm with Current West, and I'll be one of your facilitation team members for today's regional workshop. So we want to start with a few housekeeping items. So first, with regard to the meeting recording, this workshop is being recorded for future viewing and will be posted at the website www.californianature.ca.gov. And just to let you know that we're also streaming the workshop live on the California Natural Resources Agency YouTube page. With regard to interpretation, this meeting is being interpreted into Spanish, Vietnamese, Cantonese, and Mandarin. And if you need interpretation services, we request that you please provide your language in the chat or raise your hand with the raise hand function. And you get to that by clicking the reactions button at the bottom of your Zoom taskbar and then click raise hand. And if you're listening in on phone and want to raise your hand to request interpretation, you dial *9, and we'll be describing more details around this in just a minute. So in order to use to access the audio channel for any of these languages, you'll click the interpretation button, which is the globe icon in the Zoom taskbar. And this button it's not there now, but it will appear after we complete this set of instructions. And these instructions will be repeated in all 4 of these languages, and then you'll be able to join the audio channel for that language. Again, at the end of these instructions, the interpretation button will appear, and you'll be able to select your language to begin interpretation. So now we're actually going to provide these instructions in the 4 languages. And I would like to invite Victor Hernandez first for Spanish. Welcome, Victor.
Thank you, Eric. Buenas tardes. Esta reunión será interpretada en español, vietnamita, cantonés y mandarín. Para poder acceder al canal de audio de cualquiera de estos idiomas, por favor, haga clic en el botón de interpretación y aparecerá un icono del globo o un símbolo del mundo en la barra de tareas de Zoom al fondo de su pantalla. Y después de eso aparecerá un menú y de entonces podrá usted seleccionar el idioma que usted necesite. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. And for Vietnamese, Tiffany Tong.
Good afternoon. My name is Tiffany. Xin chào quý vị. Tên tôi là Tiffany. Nếu quý vị cần các dịch vụ phiên dịch, xin ghi rõ tên ngôn ngữ của quý vị vào khung hội thoại và chúng tôi sẽ đáp ứng nhu cầu của quý vị. Quý vị có thể chú ý thấy rằng nhóm chúng tôi sử dụng chức năng giơ tay, raise hand bằng cách nhấn vào nút phản hồi để tham gia hội thảo bằng tiếng Tây Ban Nha, tiếng Việt, tiếng phổ thông hay tiếng quan thoại. Xin nhấn nút phiên dịch ở cuối màn hình của quý vị, sau đó xin chọn ngôn ngữ của quý vị. Một lần nữa xin quý vị chọn nhấp con chuột vào cái quả địa cầu ở bên màn hình bên tay phải để chọn cái ngôn ngữ tiếng Việt mà quý vị muốn nghe. Cảm ơn quý vị rất là nhiều. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tiffany. For Mandarin, Kathy Wu, please.
Hello， 大家好，我的名字 Kathy， 我将为这个会议做国语普通话同声传译，欢迎大家来参加我们的会议。需要中文翻译，请用口译的按钮是一个地球仪，在你的屏幕的下面 taskbar 那个任务栏下面有一个像地球仪，你可以点击国语普通话选择 Mandarin， 粤语广东话寻找 Cantonese。如果要看英文字幕，就是按 CC 在下面任务栏，谢谢。如果是那个用电话呢，就是按那个 一个星，一个9，如果需要有什么需要我们帮忙，还有可以用聊天，如果你需要翻译，你可以再用聊天或者 reaction， 这个都可以打进去你们的要国语，谢谢 ，Thank you。
Thank you, Kathy. And then finally for Cantonese, Wei Tang.
係今次會議咧係將會 Am I mute? No. 今次會議咧係將會翻譯成係西班牙語啦、越南文啦、廣東話同埋國語普通話係4種係語言嘅。要使用以上任何一種語言嘅頻道咧，咁咧請你咧係單擊熒幕下方嘅任務欄嘅口譯功能按鈕啦，咁就係 interpretation 嘅個樣咧就好似一個地球圖標咁樣，咁咧就然後咧就會出現一個選項單啦。請喺從中咧係選取廣東話 Cantonese， 咁咧就係呢個信息係結束之後咧就會係啟動口譯功能，請咧係作出你嘅選擇，然後咧就開始係我哋就會係做同聲翻譯㗎啦。係 ，thank you.
Okay, thank you to Wei and to all of our interpreters. We now invite participants to join the interpretation audio channels. Now, please click the interpretation button, again, which is the globe icon in the Zoom taskbar to do so. Okay, a few more logistical slides. On the topic of closed captioning, this is also available for this workshop. And if you'd like to use this option, please click the closed caption icon in the Zoom taskbar and then select either subtitles to view subtitles at the bottom of your screen or live transcript to see the full transcript on the side panel. Okay, a couple of slides on how to participate. Participants will generally be muted during the workshop and will be participating primarily via polling, and no video is required. If you do need technical assistance at any time, please contact the technical support team by using the chat button on the Zoom taskbar. And we'll also be sharing relevant links through the chat feature throughout the workshop. Participants can also request technical assistance by using the raise hand icon, and at least for some versions of Zoom, you can click on the reactions bar or button in the Zoom taskbar and then select raise hand. And maybe for other versions of Zoom, you can just see the raise hand icon on the taskbar. If you're participating by phone, you dial *9 to raise your hand. Tips for a productive workshop. So we have a large number of participants today. Thank you all for attending. I think we're getting close to the 250 right now. You are all attending both virtually via webinar and also by phone, and we want to make this workshop as productive as possible for everyone. And so as we move forward through the workshop, we're inviting you to please follow these guidelines. First, please be respectful, and this is both to each other as you're here representing different experiences and perspectives, but also to the workshop agenda and objectives and what we're trying to achieve with the meeting. Secondly, threatening, profane, and other inappropriate language is not allowed, will be permitted. And finally, and relatedly, disruptive participants will be removed from the workshop as needed. So we invite your cooperation in making this a productive meeting for everyone. So in terms of introductions, facilitating the workshop today with me from Cruns and West will be Jenna Tourget and Joan Isaacson. And joining us from the California Natural Resources Agency are Jennifer Norris, who's the Deputy Secretary for Biodiversity and Habitat, Mark Gold, who's the Deputy Secretary for Oceans and Coastal Policy and the Executive Director for the Ocean Protection Council, and also David Shabazian, who's the Director of the California Department of Conservation. In terms of our objectives for today, these 9 regional workshops are designed to ensure that the state hears from a broad cross-section of stakeholders with vital interests in how California achieves our goals of conserving 30% of state lands and coastal waters by 2030 and accelerating nature-based climate solutions. And so our objectives for this workshop are threefold. The first one is to provide an overview of nature-based solutions and relevant action items from Governor Newsom's Executive Order N-82-20 from last fall. Second objective is to introduce the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy and the pathways to 30 by 30. And finally, and most importantly, it's to hear from you and to gain your regional perspectives and ideas. And so final slide for me, in terms of our agenda, we'll be spending about 40 minutes providing you with updates, and then the rest of our time conducting polling activities aimed at gathering your insights, experiences, and ideas. So after brief presentations by Secretary Wade Crowfoot by video, and then also by Jen Norris, Dave Shabazian, and Mark Gold of the California Natural Resources Agency, we will kick off the public engagement portion of the meeting with a poll to learn more about you and your priorities. At that point, a little less than an hour into the meeting, we'll break into 3 smaller breakout groups to engage in interactive polling. And we'll be asking a range of questions on a variety of topics. And these breakout sessions will go quickly, and so we will invite you to please respond to the polling questions as concisely as possible so everyone has a chance to contribute. We want and need your experiences and ideas as we work together to create substantive long-term strategies that the state will implement to achieve this goal. And so now I would like to turn it over to Jennifer Norris to share a tribal acknowledgement. Jen?
Thank you, Eric, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Jennifer Norris, Deputy Secretary for Biodiversity and Habitat. I'd like to start our meeting today by acknowledging the importance of tribal communities in this process. Our tribal partners are integral to achieving the goals set forth in the governor's executive order. And we know that by working together, we can further safeguard the environment, preserve tribal cultural practices, and strengthen relationships between the state and tribal nations. The Resources Agency is currently engaging tribes through government-to-government consultation. In addition, in coming months, we will be holding tribal listening sessions to engage tribes, solicit tribal input, and explore opportunities to collaborate. We look forward to working with our tribal partners, and we encourage those who would like to connect with us on tribal perspectives to visit our website to see a schedule of the listening sessions. Please visit our website at www.resources.ca.gov. I think someone will put that in the chat for us. So we also want to acknowledge any elected officials that joined today. Thank you so much for your participation. Public engagement is critically important to the state, even as we continue to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that virtual meetings are not the ideal way to have a conversation, but we didn't want to delay this important work on 30 by 30 and climate smart lands. While this isn't how we envisioned, we do hope these meetings can be productive and positive for everyone involved. Collaboration is essential to achieving the goals outlined in the executive order. As we begin our conversations today, I want to underscore our commitment to engaging all voices, all perspectives, and to advancing equity in everything we do. We begin today with opening remarks from Wade Crowfoot, Secretary of the California Natural Resources Agency, which protects and manages California's natural resources, including our forests, rivers and waterways, coast and ocean, fish and wildlife, water and energy. Here's Secretary Crowfoot.
I'm Wade Crowfoot, our California Natural Resources Secretary. Welcome and thank you for joining one of 9 virtual regional workshops to advance nature-based solutions across our state. Last fall, Governor Newsom issued an executive order that elevated the role of nature in both combating climate change, maintaining and protecting our biological diversity, and achieving more equitable access to our outdoors. In our agency, the Natural Resources Agency, we're really excited about the governor's leadership that's, of course, matched by our legislature on expanding environmental conservation across our state to achieve these multiple objectives. We live in a remarkable state, known around the world for our natural diversity of plants and animals, topographies, ecosystems, and our cultural diversity, where we are succeeding and thriving across all conceivable differences within our human species. The work that you'll be involved in and the input you provide will ensure that looking forward in coming years and decades, we craft smart, ambitious, but achievable strategies to expand environmental conservation and utilize nature in the fight against climate change. In that executive order that Governor Newsom issued last fall, he called for conserving 30% of our state's land and coastal waters by 2030, which we call the 30 by 30 target. He also called for the development of a climate-smart land strategy so we can understand how we better manage both our natural and working lands to both remove carbon from the atmosphere and protect people and nature from the impacts of climate change. The best ideas we have and the most effective actions will achieve multiple benefits. At the same time, combating climate change, preserving biodiversity, and expanding recreational and outdoor access for all Californians. We know there are no one-size-fits-all solutions from Sacramento for this work, and our regions are so different in both the challenges they face and the opportunities they offer, that these regional workshops are really critical to help us understand what is the situation in your part of California? What are critical priorities in this area that we need to address? What are challenges you face to environmental conservation and climate action and equitable access? And importantly, what are opportunities for our state agency and more importantly, our state government to help you seize these opportunities in your region to expand equitable, thoughtful, sustainable, balanced environmental conservation? So we're really excited with your participation and look forward to these regional workshops figuring in and informing both a strategy for the achievement of the 30 by 30 target and our climate smart land strategy coming up in recent months. Really appreciate all that you do in your own lives on these important topics, and very excited to hear from you today and in coming weeks and months. Thank you.
Great. So we appreciate the words from Secretary Crowfoot. And now I'd like to turn it over to David Shabazian, who's the Director of California's Department of Conservation, for an introduction and overview of nature-based solutions. So off to you, David.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, my name is David Shabazian. I'm the Director at the California Department of Conservation, and I'm going to provide for you today some background on what we're doing. There's three main topics that I'm going to talk about. First of all is what is the executive order and why did the governor issue it? And then what are nature-based solutions and why do they matter? And then finally, the deliverables that Secretary Crowfoot talked about, those are a focus of our workshop today. So after I outline the goals of the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy and how it might support your priorities, I'll hand it off to Jen Norris to talk about our 30 by 30 effort. So why this executive order? So I think we all know that climate change and biodiversity loss are among the top 5 threats humanity will face in the next 10 years. As we know all too well, California is not immune to these crises. Last year alone, historic wildfires burned over 4 million acres in California. Lives were lost, homes and businesses were destroyed. Public health suffered from hazardous air quality, and a large swath of the nature we treasure is now gone. These fires took place in the middle of a deadly pandemic and heat wave, and on the heels of the most extreme drought the state has ever seen. On top of that, California is considered one of the world's 36 biodiversity hotspots because of its high concentration of unique species that are also experiencing unprecedented threats, including climate change. The governor issued the executive order in direct response to these threats and outlined a comprehensive and results-oriented nature-based solutions agenda for California. Which brings us to what are nature-based solutions and why are they important? So nature-based solutions are actions that work with and enhance nature to help address societal challenges as well as opportunities. They are important because they provide so many benefits, many of which we depend on for our well-being. This slide shows a few examples of nature-based solutions that address climate change and protect biodiversity. While this is largely a rural initiative, it also has an urban component, starting with the circular image you see is in the middle there is an example of community greening, a suite of nature-based solutions that can cool communities facing extreme heat, reduce energy costs, allow soils to better absorb water, expand access to nature, enhance biodiversity, reduce the impacts of pollution, and increase quality of life. At the top right image, you see wetlands and riparian areas, which, when they are restored and functioning, sequester carbon, reduce flood risks, filter pollution, and protect habitat. The middle right image is an example of an agricultural nature-based solution. This hedgerow supports pollinators, improves habitat, conserves water, enhances our food supply, and contributes to our economic prosperity. And finally, the lower right image speaks to the many benefits nature-based solutions in our forests deliver to Californians. Healthy forests reduce the threat of catastrophic wildfire and serve as a carbon sink. They also capture and clean our water supply, improve air quality, provide habitat for our wildlife, and support local economies. Today's workshop is focused on two particular deliverables of the Governor's Nature-Based Solutions Executive Order that the Natural Resources Agency has been tasked with coordinating. Today, I'm going to briefly outline our goals for the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy and explore how it might support your regional priorities. So natural and working lands is the term we use in California to describe nature-based solutions, which includes iconic landscapes we know and love, our forests, our wetlands, croplands, community green spaces, grasslands, deserts, and more. These lands cover at least 90% of the state's 104 million acres. While our lands offer significant opportunity to meet California's climate goals, they have been the missing piece in our state's climate agenda. So the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy is intended to close this gap. We are excited to align relevant existing state efforts under one cohesive strategy and identify land management actions that help us protect vulnerable communities, achieve carbon neutrality, provide public health and safety, and expand economic opportunity. So we want to learn about nature-based climate solutions that are important to you and how our statewide strategy can support the Sierra Nevada region with its environmental, economic, and equity priorities. So some examples that come to mind, the Sierra Nevada is already experiencing the impacts of climate change, such as drought, wildfires, and the loss of snowpack. So are there nature-based climate solutions you are successfully deploying that should be amplified in the state strategy, such as landscape scale forest restoration, or meadow restoration, or prescribed burning? So what are some of those examples that you think we should know more about? Also, by the end of this century, the Sierra Nevada region is expected to warm by 6 to 9 degrees Fahrenheit on average. So what are the implications for efforts to build healthy forests and communities? And how can nature-based climate solutions play a role in reducing risks associated with this increase in temperature? Many communities in the region are dependent on industries directly affected by the impacts of climate change, such as tourism, recreation, water agencies, timber companies, grazing, and fisheries. So how can the state's climate smart land management strategy support sustained economic prosperity in the Sierra Nevada? Finally, are there industries and careers in the natural and working land sector you'd like to elevate in the Sierra Nevada region, such as more foresters working on restoration or fuels reduction, or more recreation businesses, or maybe more industries that are utilizing biomass for a range of products? So these are the questions that we hope that you can address today with us and give us responses that we can use going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Jen Norris, for her presentation on 30 by 30.
Thanks, David. Again, I'm Jennifer Norris, and I am running point on the 30 by 30 initiative for California. As you have heard, our goal is to conserve 30% of our lands and coastal waters by 2030. And we want to do so in a manner that protects biodiversity, combats climate change, increases access to nature, and safeguards our economic sustainability and food supply. We are being purposeful in our approach. We want to conserve places that effectively protect the biological diversity of California, our unique plants and animals. We also want to conserve lands and waters that meaningfully address climate change in the ways that David just outlined. And we want to conserve in a way that provides equitable access to nature and its benefits, like clean water, clean air, climate resilience, and recreation. So what kinds of places are we talking about? Here are some examples from this region. This first one is the Humbug Valley, or Tasman Koyam. This 2,300 acre property in Plumas County was transferred in 2019 from PG&E to the Maidu Summit Consortium, made up of 9 Native American organizations, including 2 federally recognized tribes. Protected under conservation easement by the Feather River Land Trust and California Department of Fish and Wildlife, this property serves as a model for the integration of traditional ecological knowledge in protecting and enhancing cultural and natural resources. This is familiar to probably many of you, Mono Lake, which is protected by state parks and the US Forest Service. Mono Lake covers about 60 square miles, and at more than 1 million years old, it is one of the oldest lakes in North America. Mono's shrimp and flies provide food for more than 80 species of migratory birds, including Wilson's and red-necked phalaropes, who arrive by the hundreds of thousands every year. And finally, the Upper Truckee Marsh. This 250-acre site was restored by the Tahoe Conservancy to protect Tahoe's famous clear blue waters, sensitive wildlife, and native plants. This site provides access to the shoreline for the disadvantaged community of the city of South Lake Tahoe. The restored marsh filters pollution and absorbs winter floodwaters, which helps to stabilize groundwater supplies, helping the area become more resilient to drought. Achieving 30 by 30 will rely on the protection of diverse places like this across the state. Good conservation can happen on every conceivable land type and through lots of different strategies. One size does not fit all. At the end of the day, conservation happens locally, so we need to work together. By February 2022, we will deliver our Pathways to 30 by 30 document, which will identify opportunities and strategies to achieve 30 by 30. It will also identify challenges to meeting our goals. This document is intended to set us on the path to successful implementation of 30 by 30. Today, we want to hear from your region and get your perspectives on what those opportunities and challenges are. We're interested to know how you think we should go about achieving 30 by 30 in the Sierra Nevada. Which strategies to conserve lands are most effective in this region? We want to invest in successful approaches. Tell us what those are. At the same time, we'd like to know which strategies are more challenging and why, so we can work to address those gaps. Your insights today will be used to develop our document and to help us define what conservation means. You'll be asked later to share what conservation looks like to you. The executive order called for the establishment of this collaborative approach in recognition of the fact that partners across the state have experience and expertise that we can learn from. This conversation is the beginning of what we hope is an ongoing partnership. 30 by 30 isn't a new mandate, and it won't be accomplished from the top down. By sharing your insights with us, we want to learn how we can be more effective partners. Our ultimate goal is for 30 by 30 to become what is called an open source movement, for people across the state from a diverse array of sectors to commit to achieving 30 by 30 and work with us in partnership. Thank you again for being here. I really look forward to hearing your ideas. Now I'll hand it over to my colleague, Mark Gold.
Thanks, Jan.
Great to see such an amazing turnout this afternoon. This is by far the biggest workshop that we've seen so far. I'm glad to be here today as we focus on some of the most pressing issues facing California's work to protect our natural habitats, combat climate change, and ensure biodiversity in this great state. For those of you not familiar with the Ocean Protection Council, we have a mission to ensure that California maintains healthy, resilient, and productive ocean and coastal ecosystems. The OPC works across various state agencies to coordinate activities related to ocean protection, and we also establish policies that facilitate the collection and sharing of scientific data, as well as identify policy areas that need to be addressed at both the state and federal levels. State waters run from the tide lines to 3 miles out, and 16% of coastal waters are part of the statewide marine protected area network. There are 124 MPAs in this network. 9% of state coastal marine waters are protected through no-take reserves, and another 7% are limited commercial and or recreational take MPAs. The MPA network is approaching a decadal review of this program by the end of 2022. And currently, we are not looking at MPA expansion as part of the 30 by 30 path for the ocean. This is really important for everyone to note, is that the decadal review is separate from this effort to develop the pathway to 30 by 30 for the ocean. Our coastal regions and ocean are important ecosystems that are not only places where species thrive, but also serve as main attractions for California residents and visitors who want to enjoy the sand, water, and features of our coastline. These areas are also integral to our economy with aquaculture, energy generation, and the network of ports up and down the state that are essential to the movement of goods in and out of California and the entire nation. Climate change threatens the coast and ocean with rising sea level rise and ocean acidification, while other coastal resources suffer from the impacts of water pollution, harmful algae blooms, and habitat loss. We must take steps now to prevent further erosion of the coast and loss of rocky intertidal habitats, wetlands, and beaches, the loss of kelp forests, and the loss of marine life. In order to develop the path to 30 by 30 for coastal waters, stakeholder engagement will be critical to better define what conservation means for California's coastal zone and waters. As examples, California has 34 areas of special biological significance identified, 3 national estuary programs, 3 national estuarine research reserves, and 4 national marine sanctuaries that are critical for conservation. Most of these areas have additional conservation measures such as oil, gas, and mineral extraction bans in marine sanctuaries, and pollution discharge limits in areas of special biological significance. We can look at these areas as potential candidates for additional conservation measures. Overall, this planning effort will enable California to develop practical and scientifically based strategies that will get us to 30 by 30 for our coastal regions and ocean waters. Thanks, and now back to Jen.
Thanks, Mark. I do want to point out that Mark and I both know that there's no ocean in the Sierra Nevada, but we wanted to give you a complete story of what we're working on because it is a complete package. Thanks, Mark. So if you watched our January webinar, you know that we have been working with Esri on a geospatial information system called CA Nature. This system is being designed to be a publicly accessible suite of interactive mapping and visualization tools. CA Nature will bring together maps of biodiversity, climate change, and access into one place so that we can view and analyze different features of the landscape together. It will allow us to identify places across California where we have the opportunity to achieve our biodiversity, climate, and equity goals. We will use CA Nature to assess what percentage of California is already conserved and track progress toward our goal. We're currently developing CA Nature using authoritative statewide data that we currently use or have access to. But of course, this is only the first version. We expect to expand this system over time, integrating new data that reflects changes in our understanding and knowledge. Some of you have been asking, how can you provide data for use in CA Nature? There is now a submission form on our website where you can provide information about the data you want us to consider for future versions. We are most interested in statewide information that meets our program objectives and meets strong scientific data and documentation standards. So stay tuned for future updates on CA Nature. I will now turn it over to the facilitators. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Joan Isaacson. I'm one of the facilitators. And as you heard from David, Jen, and Mark, the state has been busy since Governor Newsom issued the executive order. So let's zoom out and look at where we've been and where we're going next. Since Governor Newsom issued the executive order last October, the California Natural Resources Agency and its partner agencies have made some important progress towards developing these strategies. In January of this year, a kickoff webinar was hosted by the state that drew in over 800 interested parties. CNRA also began a formal consultation process with the California Native American tribes and will continue to host tribal listening sessions in the coming months to share information, solicit tribal input, and collaborate. CNRA has been engaging with interested parties and stakeholders from around the state to hear perspectives and insights related to these efforts. An important step was launching the website, www.californianature.ca.gov, to serve as a portal for visitors to learn and engage in developing the Pathways to 30 by 30 document and the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy. Also, a public input questionnaire has been released and is posted on the website to gather experiences and ideas from a broad cross-section of Californians. The questionnaire is open until May 14th, so please check it out and provide additional information and send a link to others who would be interested in filling it out. And today is the 4th of 9 regional workshops to gain input and perspectives. These virtual webinars are open to all interested parties, no matter where you reside, and all of you are welcome to attend more than one. This summer, CNRA will convene special topical advisory panels to address key questions to support the development of the Pathways to 30 by 30 document and the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy, as well as the CA Nature GIS tool that we just heard about. Each advisory panel will produce a summary document that gives context to their topic area, offers technical and other insights to provide key recommendations. Topics will include issues related to climate change, biodiversity, defining conservation, and equitable approaches to this work. The panel will present their relevant deliberations and recommendations in a 2-part virtual convening, concluding with time for public comment on the topic to be received by the CNRA leadership. Then the team will use this information that we gather in the drafting of the Climate Smart Land Strategy document, which will be released this summer for public review and input. This important document will be finalized and then delivered in October as we begin the next phase of the effort. So looking at the fall, we'll host another series of virtual workshops to update the public on our progress and invite more participation. And we'll also be drafting and releasing the other strategy document, Pathways to 30 by 30. The public's review and input will be critical, just like the Smart Climate Land Strategy. The strategy document will be finalized and delivered in February 2022, so just early next year. And as it was mentioned earlier, ongoing public involvement and engagement remains critically important to the state, even as we continue to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. This collaborative process is a significant aspect of how we will be able to achieve the goals outlined in the executive order. And as conditions improve, we look forward to scheduling in-person opportunities to get your insights and perspectives. As I mentioned, the new website has been launched to support this effort. The website is www.californianature.ca.gov. It serves as a portal of information about advancing the 30 by 30 and climate smart lands initiatives and planning processes. This new website features information about the executive order, how nature-based solutions work, important data on climate change in California, ways to get involved through the regional workshops and other events, as well as a place, importantly, to share your insights. The website is part of ensuring that the state has a robust public engagement program in meeting the goals of the effort. And importantly, right now on the website, www.californianature.ca.gov, is an online interactive public questionnaire designed to solicit input that can be used in developing the two main strategy documents that we must do as a state and guide the work. So be sure to visit www.californianature.ca.gov to learn more, share your input, and keep informed as we achieve these critical goals. And we want you to stay in touch with the team. So please contact us, ask questions, share your experiences and ideas using these multiple platforms that you can see on the screen right now. And now over to Jenna Torget for exploring the region segment of this workshop.
Right, thank you so much, Joan. As she mentioned, we are moving on to the portion of today's workshop that focuses in on perspectives in the Sierra Nevada region and provides an opportunity for the public to participate in the process. So today's regional workshop is in the Sierra Nevada region. For our purposes, the region consists of Alpine, Amador, Calaveras, El Dorado, Inyo, Lassen, Mariposa, Modoc, Mono, Nevada, Plumas, Sierra, and Tuolumne counties, as well as the eastern extents of Fresno, Kern, Madera, Placer, and Tulare counties. So over 750,000 people call the Sierra Nevada region home. Geographically, this is the largest region in the state. The Sierra Nevadas region contains some of the most popular and well-known natural lands and recreational areas in both California and the United States. These include Yosemite National Park and Lake Tahoe, as well as extensive skiing, hiking, and camping throughout the region. Visitor tourism represents around $7 billion, or just under 18% of total taxable sales. With leading commodities including cattle, pasture or rangeland, and livestock products, the region also produces approximately $600 million in agricultural revenue. As you probably know, the Sierra Nevada region is rich in both natural and agricultural lands. The region's land area is predominantly covered by shrub and tree forest, accounting for 38% of the total land area each. This is followed by desert or barren at 12%, grasslands 7%, and wetlands are approximately 1.5%, while settlements account for less than 1%. Water represents a little less than 2% of the region. This is a dynamic region that contributes greatly to the entire state. We wanted to provide this regional snapshot before we dive further into our meeting. Your perspective will be important as we move to the next section, where we engage with you and gather your input on a series of questions that will be used in developing strategies. So, To get your experiences and ideas, we'll be using a software called Poll Everywhere. There'll be 3 ways to participate. You can choose the one that is most convenient to you. So the first is you can participate by computer by opening a browser and going to www.pollev.com/KW-poll1. This is in the chat as well, but it's pollev.com/KW-poll and the number 1. You can do the same on your smartphone. You can open a browser on your smartphone and go to www.pollev.com/KW-poll1. Or you can participate by text by sending a text to 22333 with the message KW-poll1. I'll repeat that. If you'd like to respond to the polls using text messaging, you can text the phrase KWPOLL with the number 1 at the end to 22333. We'll do a couple of quick questions here in this larger session and then move into breakout rooms in a few minutes. Our facilitators will let you know when to use your preferred option to respond to questions. And as we're asking the questions, we really want to hear what you think. And this tool allows us to save your answers and help inform the direction of this initiative. So in these initial questions, we'll be turning the responses into a word cloud. And so as you type your response, if you have 2 words, make sure to do an underscore between them, and that will keep it as one phrase or one phrase in our word cloud. So if you're typing an answer that has 2 words in it, do an underscore between the 2 words. Okay, so I'm going to move us to our first question, and the question is, where are you located? So again, you can be in your browser, on your phone, or text. Where are you located? Mammoth Lakes, Lake Tahoe. So I see the underscore between them. Thank you. All right, Truckee. I see Bishop. I see Berkeley. All right, folks coming in strong from from Mammoth and Bishop. Some folks from San Francisco, from Placerville. Lee Vining. All right, more folks responding here from Benton. Tahoe, Shasta, Costa Mesa, Truckee. All right, but you can see in the word cloud here where a lot of the folks are calling in from: Sacramento, Truckee, Mammoth Lakes, Bishop, Lone Pine. All right, and Fresno. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question here in about 5 seconds. Let's take about 5 to 10 seconds here as we get more answers in. And let's move on to the next question. And someone mentioned in the chat Curtin County and Kern River Valley as well. So the next question is, what sector do you represent? So this, you respond with a letter. So what sector do you represent? So again, KW poll 1 to 22333. And again, if you already have that message open on your phone, you can keep it open. And if you're in your browser window, if you refresh the browser window, it will refresh the question as well. So what sector do you represent? A is government, federal, state, or local. B is tribal government or tribal community. C is business, investor, or labor. D is non-governmental or community-based organization. E is academic, and F is general public. So it looks like we might need to go back one slide and forward one slide. Sometimes the slide gets a little stuck here. All right, for the team, if you could go back one slide and forward one slide, that would be great. And F is general public as well. All right, let's work through this tech issue here. I think if it's Ali running the slides or Ross, if you can resync. We'll give it a quick sec. I see a couple people have messaged me in the chat. It works for now, but I'll just say I got a couple people from the general public, but we definitely want to see where people are at. Okay, so we might come back to this one. So I'm going to go on to the next slide here. So Ross, if you can move us on to the next slide. Or start share again. All right, it looks like we're having a quick technical issue, and that's all right. We'll get it right back up going. Okay, so great. So this is the third question here. It looks like some people have moved on there. I see the question is, when you think about nature or special places in the region, what comes to mind? And it looks like we have quite a few responses already coming in. Thanks, folks, for going on to the next one if it was on your screen there. And so I'm seeing mountains, wilderness, Yosemite, Lake Tahoe, the sequoias, some, and if we can change the view here to make it a little bit larger, the visual settings there. Awesome. So wilderness, mountains, rivers, there we go. The Sierra and meadows. All right, so you all are seeing how we are, how we're getting through this here. And we're gonna actually, as we go into the breakout rooms, we're gonna do a couple more, but I think we can go back to the last slide because I really wanna see what sector folks represent. Okay, so if you're still in this slide, if we can go to what sector you represent. So A, government, federal, state, or local. B, tribal government or tribal community. C, business, investor, labor. D, non-government or community-based organization. And then we have academic and general public. So I see here we have a lot of folks from the non-governmental community, about 50%. The next is government, federal, state, and local. You have some good representation from members of the public. And then folks here from the business, investor, labor, and representation from our tribal government or tribal communities. So thank you so much. And thank you to my facilitation team for helping troubleshoot too. I know we have some great answers in here. So I'm going to move us on to the next section here. So this is giving you an insight into what we're going to be doing next. And this is the end of the plenary session of this meeting. But a key goal of this meeting is to invite you further to provide your input to help inform the development of the Natural Lands Climate Smart Strategy and the 30 by 30 pathway document. And as we have such a large number of participants, we're going to go into breakout groups so that your participation and input can be most effectively captured. So in the breakout session, we're going to be asking the public to provide your experiences and ideas in 3 areas regarding regional interests and current efforts, regional challenges, and regional opportunities. So participants who requested interpretation when you registered will be placed into and asked to remain in the main accommodations room, which is this room here. And then other webinar participants will be randomly assigned to breakout room 1, 2, or you'll stay in this main room. And if you're on the phone, you'll also stay in this room as well. So there's technically going to be 3 breakout rooms, but one of the breakout rooms is actually this main room here. We're going to capture folks' input in these breakout rooms, similar to how we did in the plenary session. And recognizing that the questions are high level and we're asking participants to share brief responses, we're hoping to get to some common themes in the responses. And the intent is to also provide an opportunity for participants to see and reflect on other people's responses. Following this workshop, the facilitation team will compile all the responses into the questions and prepare a meeting summary containing a synthesis of common themes. All responses will be treated equally and will be included in the meeting summary appendices. And remember also there is a public input questionnaire that is running parallel to the regional workshops. This questionnaire is intended to provide interested communities and members of the public with a more detailed opportunity to provide targeted input and to inform the development of the 30 by 30 pathways document and the natural and working lands climate smart strategy. Since phone participants cannot provide input via computer browser, we'll make sure you're in this room, as I mentioned before, and we encourage everyone who receives a message to enter a breakout room to follow the message on your screen to go into the breakout room. And we thank you for your patience in the next few minutes as we transition you into the breakout groups. So let's go. Okay, and just for phone users, a quick reminder to not, and for those using interpretation, to not go into a breakout room. You're going to stay in here in the main room with us. And thanks everyone for your patience as we transition into this room.
Hey, Jenna, I'm here with you again.
Oh, hi, Jen. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Great. I'm excited for this, to hear what folks have to say tonight. So thanks everyone for your participation as we transition. So you're in this main plenary room, which is also our accommodations room. So we're making sure folks who need interpretation or who are on the phone can also provide input. So this is phone only and non-English speaker and just folks who are joining in from the webinar as well. So as a reminder, we're still recording this session and streaming live on YouTube for others to be able to view at a later time. And second is our interpretation is still available. So if you joined late to this room, please look for interpretation instructions in the chat box. So again, my name is Jenna Tourget. I'm your facilitator during this session. We have a lot of information to give you to make sure that you have the proper instructions. And so we're sure everyone can participate. So we ask that you stay with me for a second while I give the instructions and we can make sure everyone has the opportunity to provide input today. If you have any technical issues, you can call or text the number 619-488-6892. And so we know that if you're calling in by phone, you might not have the option to participate by computer. And so we'll be able to get your input by text or verbally in this room. That being said, we do encourage you to text your response if you're reasonably able to do so and it's not a financial burden. And because these text messages allow us to accurately capture your input. All right, so there's the 3 ways to provide input. And I want to note that when we did the word clouds earlier, it was a different browser window, a different address, and a different message within the chat. So there's going to be a new message here. So the first is if you're on your computer and you want to do a browser window, it's www.polev.com/ /KW poll 2. So the change is the number 2. The same on your smartphone, www.pollev.com/KW poll 2. And then you can also text KW poll 2 to the number 22333. So that's 22333. And it's KWPOLL2. If you're not able to text your responses, we will have the opportunity for you to provide verbal input as well. You can raise your hand in this room by dialing *9. I'll unmute you and ask you to dial *6 to unmute yourself on your end. Because we have a lot of people on today and some phone call-in users, we'll do 3 phone call-in users if people do want to speak verbally per question before moving on to the next. So let's see. And I want to give another quick reminder. If you don't have a chance to share orally your response or provide it here, you can also always do the public input questionnaire on the website. So we're going to go to our first question. And this one is thinking about biodiversity in the region. What species, habitats, or places are important to protect? And one note, you do not have to type the _ now. So thank you for continuing that. I've got some good students here. So in this one, you don't have to provide that. So I see Death Valley, Owens River, rivers and wetlands, wetland meadows and riparian corridors, the greater sage grouse. And as people are providing their input either through text or the web, remember that you can also push *9 on your phone and we can have some verbal responses as well. I see whatever scientists say are the most important. Oak woodlands and oaklands, white bark pine, Sierra Nevada red fox. Seen a couple answers come in for rivers here. Conifers, mountain meadows and forests. So I see also some one-line responses. That's great so that we can see them come through. And so if you have a longer response, if you can break it into a couple responses, it's helpful as well. So contiguous working lands in private ownership. Giant sequoias. Trout fishing streams. Someone said stop water table depletion in groundwater over something. I can't see it, but just as a reminder, you don't have to do the _ now. I see another one for avian species in wetlands. Focusing on folks who are most impacted by climate change. Riparian, Pacific flyway, fishers, martins, spotted owls, and mountain meadows. I've seen mountain meadows come through a couple times, rivers come through a couple times. Point Blue Conservation Science List of common ranchland birds. So that's a specific resource to define what that is. California tiger salamanders. Okay. The headwaters of the Owens River. Forest lands with too many trees and subject to severe wildfire. Okay, so the question is biodiversity. What species, habitats, or places are important to protect? For my phone call-in users, I invite you not to be shy. If you would like to provide a verbal comment, you can push *9 on your phone and I'll unmute you. You can provide your comment and we'll capture it as well. Riparian forests, migratory species, wolves and mountain lions. All right, I'm going to do another minute or so before we move on to the next. So get your answer in. And just as a reminder, if I haven't read it out or you haven't seen it on the screen, it comes through a little slower than you might type. And so all of this is being recorded behind the scenes as well. Trout fishing streams. Encourage productivity in private working lands. Vernal pools and pristine natural areas. Return Mono Lake to court-appointed level. Native grasslands. All right, I'm going to move us on to the next question. So Allie, if you can move us forward. So this next question, we're going to remind folks how you can respond. It's KW poll 2 to 22333. And you can also, if you're on your browser, if you refresh the browser window, it'll refresh the question. So the question is, thinking about this region, what nature-based climate solutions are important to you? I see prescribed burning and fire coming through. And for my call-in users, if you have a raised hand, you can raise your hand. If you if you are not on your phone, you can provide your response here as well. So I see healthy forests, protecting early seral forests, forest management, wildfire prevention, and prescribed burns. Protecting mature old growth forests. Conservation easements. Seen prescribed fires coming through a couple times. Meadows, working with landowners. Protecting mountain meadows and wetlands. Okay, we're going to spend another minute or so on this. And again, for my phone call-in users, you can push *9. It'll let me know that you have something you want to say verbally. Remove unnecessary dams. Reform 1972 mining laws. Mining is no longer the most important use of federal lands. See river and wetland restoration. I see conservation easements and gap analysis to connect habitat via corridors. Enhancing connectivity. And for my phone call-in users, if you are only on your phone, if you're phone only and can't see the screen, that's the folks that we want to make sure can raise your hand. Hedge grown and other private property restoration. Okay. So let's move on to the next question here. We have 5 questions in this section. So this next one, you can keep the text chain you have open or the browser window you have open and just refresh that browser window. And the question is, with regard to 30 by 30 and or nature-based solutions, how can we advance equity and opportunity in this region? How can we advance equity and opportunity in this region? And again, if you're a phone call-in user only, you can dial *9. So I have listen to indigenous voices, empower and allow tribes to steward and benefit, see clean air, education and outreach, workforce development for forest restoration activities, prioritizing tribal sovereignty and self-determination, reduce regulatory compliance costs, greater access to forest recreation. So I'm seeing notes on access. I'm seeing notes on tribal governments and interaction with tribes. I'm seeing notes on education, providing access to diverse forms of recreation, bring underserved community members to the high country of the Sierras, empowering nonprofits and tribes to lead restoration project activities, looking at jobs, creating jobs and economic opportunities for rural and low-income communities, engaging diverse community interests and engaging specific tribes in the region, better connect communities directly to nature with non-motorized trail access and connectivity. And again, if you're a phone call-in user and you're thinking of a way to advance equity and opportunity in the region, you can push *9 and it'll let me know you have something to add as well. Give the national parks back to tribes. Increased funding for outdoor education programs. So I see a funding responses, access, whether it's bringing people into a new area or providing nature in an area where people are at, public education programs that reach a diverse student body and their families, transportation from underserved communities to the Sierras. All right, supporting California naturalists and educating the public, and thinking about partnerships with tribes. I'm going to give us another minute here. I'm seeing such rich responses coming through. The Eastern Sierra is chronically underfunded in terms of land management. Looking at creating conservation-based jobs, co-management with tribes, removing green tape for restoration projects. Okay. Looking at equity in the region and within the region, parks in poorer areas, the relationship between concession companies and the federal government, community engagement during planning and implementation. Okay, I'm going to move us on to the next question here. So the next question is question 4A. And as a reminder, you can text, you can go to your browser, and if you're in your browser window, just make sure to refresh that browser window. And if you're a phone-only call-in user, you can press *9 to raise your hand. So what is working in this region to conserve lands or coastal waters, so conserve lands, and implement nature-based solutions to climate change? So it's kind of 3 questions: conserve lands, implement nature-based solutions, and thinking about climate change. So those bigger ideas that we're thinking about with this here. So I see conservation easements, that seems like a common theme coming through as well. National parks and state parks. Wilderness protections. The Sierra Nevada Conservancy. So I'm seeing some programs, some strategies, maybe some partnerships. Land trusts. IRWM watershed stakeholder process. And as you're thinking about things too, are there any goals or targets that are working well as well? Conservation easements coming in strong, the last couple responses here. Our national parks. Something working in the region is the California Tahoe Conservancy. Regional conservation districts and land trusts. Sportsmen and women engagement on resource management. See nonprofits that operate nature preserves. Protected corridors connecting larger conservation areas. the No Pass Highway across the Sierra south of the Tioga Pass, protection of roadless wildlands through the roadless rule. All right, and for phone call-in users, just want to remind you that you can push *9 on your phone. And then also if people are receiving translation and have a response, to add it to the chat as well. Other things that are working is local forest stakeholder collaborative groups, the Mono Lake Committee, seen the Sierra Nevada Conservancy come through a couple times. Wetland restoration. So we've seen a call out of a couple nonprofits, and this one is nonprofits that continue to pioneer innovative approaches. So let's go for another minute here as we think through what's working in the region, or what is working in the area that you're in. So trails for non-mechanized uses, sorry, it went away before I could read it all. The roadless rule, the Tahoe area rapid transit. We are getting such great responses in. I really appreciate everyone providing such great insight. CEQA is working well. All right, and remember, if you're using the underscore, you don't have to use it anymore. And if you're typing it really big, it'll come through on the back end, but I can't read it out loud here, and that's okay. Historical sites, enforcement of state and federal water regulations. And then I'm seeing collaboration as well. Okay. So as we move to the next question, I just want to remind folks, if you are having a tech question, you can note in the chat box. I think Julie Lynn is our tech person, and she's able to support, as well as Ali Skurlock. So there's a couple responses that you can do in the chat box if you're having technical issues. Okay, so this next question, 4B, again, if you are on your phone, you can press *9 to let me know you want to be unmuted. If you're on your browser, just refresh that page. If you've closed it, kwpollev.com/kwpoll2. And in your, if you've texted a response, you can stay in that tech page 22333. Sorry, that text message 22333. KW poll 2. Okay. So as we wait for some responses, the question is, what is working in the region to increase equitable access to nature? So what is working to increase equitable access to nature? So earlier, we asked on how could we advance equity and opportunity, and we want to know now what is working to increase equitable access to nature and its benefits. Okay, so it looks like, Ali, we might need to sync this page here, or go back one and go forward one to get some on the page. And just as a reminder, if you've texted in responses or if you've written them in the browser, we've got them. They'll be included in the summary and as part of the of gathering input for this process. So no worries if we don't see it here. All right, so you go back one question to 4B, what's working in the region to increase equitable access to nature and its benefits? So I'm seeing the Eastern Sierra Conservation Corps, SCICON or SCICON, however we pronounce that. Thank you. The Land Trust Outdoor Education Programs, public transportation options like the Eastern Sierra Transit. We have wildflower viewing sites the California Big Trees Association. And some things are pre-COVID and hopefully will happen again post-COVID. Outreach to Central Valley minority communities. Having concerned lands embedded within neighborhoods or easy access to neighborhoods. Disabled sports of Eastern Sierra. Some people do not know what's working to increase equitable access to nature. I see Achieve Tahoe, Alianza Ecológica, the Sequoia Riverlands Trust Earth Academy, collaborative planning is working, public transportation to public lands, and then I'm thinking too, there's no cost access to national forest lands. Are there goals and targets that are working well? I'm noting some things are not working, and so that's good to hear as well, and we'll have a question on challenges too. So keeping public access open for recreation. Reservations for Yosemite entrance so that the park is not overwhelmed. Something that's working to increase equitable access to nature. And again, if you are a phone-only user, if you click *9 on your phone or press *9 on your phone, it lets me know that you have a question or a response, and we'd love to hear from you as well. Mammoth Lakes Trails public access is something that's working to increase equitable access to nature. The department's focused on R3, getting more people in nature-based recreational activities. Connecting with local kids to connect them with their environment. I see a specific program, the Pathways to Parks Plan. EBMUD volunteer opportunities and field trips. Another thing that's working is the Kern River Nature Preserve in coordination with CADFW. Speaking of funding, no fees for Forest Service areas. Seen a couple programs come through like Acorns in the Classroom. All right, I'm going to give it another minute. We've had such great responses come through. Yards public transportation to Yosemite Park, Circle J Ranch, allowing tribal communities to access lands for cultural purposes. Okay. Providing affordable housing in towns near natural areas. I'm seeing fire policies as well. So let's move on to question 5. And just as a reminder for folks, all this information and all your responses are being captured and will be important as part of the process. So if you didn't see it on the screen, we still have it on the back end. So no worries about that. If you're a phone call-in user, *9 on your phone. And this next question, if you're on your browser, you can refresh the page, it might be helpful. This next question is, the state of California is committed to conserving 30% of its lands and coastal waters by 2030. What does conservation mean to you? And as a reminder, the state has not yet defined conservation in this context and is interested in learning what you think. So what does conservation mean to you? So I've seen a couple responses for preserving wild areas, protecting and keeping as native as possible. So the protection and preservation of lands, stopping new development, protecting preserved if it's in good condition, restoration if habitat is damaged. Thinking about the 7th generation in the future, if folks can enjoy it like we currently do. Ecosystem resilience. Conservation means ensuring long-term ecological protection. We've got the relationship to climate resilience, sustainable grazing, sustained ecosystem services. And if you're new to this room, I just want to invite you to look in the chat box. We'll add the link to where we're providing responses here. It's pollev.com/KW-poll2. We're asking, what does conservation mean for you? And again, if you're a phone-only call-in users, you can push *9 on your phone to provide your response as well. Okay, so I see other things that conservation means. Prioritizing habitat connectivity, keeping natural areas from development, making land resilient to climate change, maintaining lands to be enjoyed by my great-grandchildren, clearly defined roles. And again, if your answers are longer than a line or so, they might not come through here, but we still capture them. But if you have a response, you can break it up and do a couple so that we can see them as well on the screen. And if something's coming to your mind, if you want to add another response, definitely feel free to do so. The goal of this is you can see other people's responses and it might trigger a response for you as well. Understanding conservation in its climate context. Conservation is preserving and protecting our wild places and spaces from many things. Stop the long straw of LA from taking all of the water. Yet conservation is and must be science-based. Conservation means stopping damaging land uses and preservation for all existing still wild places. Conservation means habitat and keeping access open to the public and improving habitat on public lands. And for folks who are on your phone, you can press *9 and provide your verbal response as well. We definitely want to hear from you, and this is the place to do it. I see someone might have provided multiple responses. There's a number 6 here. We appreciate as much as you can provide. So conserving cold water fishing opportunities, the inclusion of sustainable constraints to human use, all right, so we're going to do another minute here to capture your input. And again, if you put it in earlier and you haven't seen it come through, we still are capturing it on the back end here. So I'm seeing protections for underrepresented habitats, no further decline of water resources. All right, so let's move to let's move to the next question here. And again, if you're a phone call-in user, you can press *9 on your phone. *9 on your phone to let us know that you have a question. All right, so we're going to move on to challenges. So this first question here in challenges, if you're at pollev.com/KWPOLL2 or text KW poll 2 to the number 22333. And if you're already on this, just refresh your page in your browser on your phone or your computer to see this come up as well. So I'm saying that please describe the greatest challenges to conserving lands and implementing nature-based solutions to climate change. What are some of the biggest challenges? Saying livestock and habitat degradation, funding as a challenge, corporate profits and status quo practices, wildfire, agriculture water use, seeing a challenge as poor forest management, of habitat fragmentation, a lack of public interest. Challenge might be invasive species, that water is exported, and diverted. A lack of comprehensive and accurate biological distribution database. So remember to take your time, think about information needs, priorities, funding specifically. What are specific challenges to implementing nature-based solutions? Permitting, financial incentives for practices. That CEQA and NEPA take a long time in going through the environmental process. Gold exploration and mining. Corporate greed. A couple responses in for funding. What specific funding maybe would be a challenge to implementing nature-based solutions? Partisanship that denies the need to conserve lands and waters. Habitat fragmentation, groundwater pumping, establishing limits on people and the demands of society, building on natural lands. I saw LADWP, funding and public understanding, reforming the Mining Act, seeing a note that specific funding is needed to acquire easements and fee lands to expand natural areas and inadequate funding to natural resources. A lack of coordination between state and federal practices. Resource extraction. So I'm seeing some challenges that have to do with specific agencies or different agency goals, challenges related to funding, challenges to know what incentives there are, or the education to know how to implement nature-based solutions. Seeing the challenge of water being exported from the area. But there's a lot of people on the land. The state park not willing to accept new property. And again, if you're a phone call-in user and anything that I've said verbally sparks something as well, you can press *9 on your phone and I'll unmute you and you can share your response as well. Multiple use and sustained yield mandates. For funding, the lack of investment by those who use the Sierra, and specifically philanthropic investment. The underfunding of land management agencies in the area. Building communities with lower footprints on the land, water, and air. Unsustainable recreation. Non-progressive regulations. That a challenge isn't wildfires, but people started fires. Mining interests, human ignorance, workforce capacity. So many great responses coming through to what some challenges are. Maybe in the borderlands of Nevada and Oregon. The short-term orientation in decision-making. It's difficult to acquire key parcels of land. What makes it difficult to acquire? I'll ask, just as we're thinking through some of the specific challenges, we can get into the details as well. And if you have a bigger response to, knowing that you can provide it through the public input questionnaire, and Allie will put that in the chat as well. That increasing human use and lack of adaptation or adjustment by the Forest Service, BLM, and National Park Service. Unsustainable grazing, the 1872 Mining Act. Codifying the plan so it will survive changes in leadership and funding. A challenge is the dependence on fossil fuels. And again, you can press *9 on your phone if you're joining us by phone only to provide your input. A challenge is LADWP. A challenge is insufficient funding and coordination between different jurisdictions in terms of implementation. The need for prescribed burns is a challenge. That there's not enough Forest Service, BLM, and state park employees to enforce current rules. It could be a resource challenge, a staffing challenge. Impacts from climate change. There's a threat to watershed from mining. And if you're just joining us, you can respond to this by going to pollev.com/kwpoll2 or text 22333 and get to kwpoll2 to provide a response. So recognition that well-intentioned government programs might not always lead to implementation. Prevent changes in leadership in DC that attempt to override California initiatives. Human activity is a challenge. So let's spend another minute here. High visitorship, and there are a lot of people, too many people. There's an expansion of development. So thinking about long-term threats, the Inyo National Forest doesn't have enough staff to manage the land and the people who visit. The balance between the economy and the environment. Poor planning, poor community planning, and water use issues. Okay, I'm going to have us move on to the next question here. And I want to remind folks who are joining that you can go to pollev.com/kwpoll2 or text kwpoll2 to 22333 to provide your response. If you're a phone call-in user, *2. And if you are on one of our interpretation channels, you can unmute yourself in that channel and provide your response as well. So the question is, describe the greatest challenge to increasing equitable access to nature and its benefits. So *9 if you're on your phone, or respond in the 3 ways to respond on KW poll. I'm seeing a challenge is racism, difficulty finding access areas, challenge of transportation, and challenges to increasing equitable access to nature and its benefits. There's not enough restoration and investment in poor communities. In terms of access, the distance of the Sierra Nevada from urban areas. There's a fear of trespassing. That the public face of public agencies are sometimes law enforcement. Making rural communities welcome for all people. Lack of agency knowledge about how to integrate equity issues with land management. Likely only a tiny % of people participating in this process are from minority groups. That there's a lack of multilingual signage and materials. So these are greatest challenges to increasing equitable access to nature. That there's high park entrance fees for low-income populations. That some people do not feel welcome in natural areas. Challenge is a lack of awareness. And that we need equitable access to include plant and animals in an ecosystem and limit negative human interaction. Poverty. The language of signs, outreach materials, publicity, and cultural competence in California. A lack of a connection to nature. And it's difficult to plan field trips. I noticed a response on COVID before as well, and so things might be pre and post COVID or during COVID. Having additional time to engage with appropriate community groups. Insufficient foothill public spaces near the Central Valley communities. That there's not enough outreach and media markets geared towards non-English speakers. The challenge of real collaboration with tribes as opposed to lip service. So again, challenges to increasing equitable access to nature and its benefits. And if you're a phone call-in user, *9 on your phone, and we can hear your verbal response as well, *9 on your phone. And if you've just joined us, you can go to pollev.com/kwpoll2. Seeing insufficient funding for economic justice and equity groups to engage. We'll take another minute on this response here. That we need more restoration within agricultural communities, that nature shouldn't be an hour away. So access both in terms of how people are getting to somewhere and then also whether there's nature in their communities. Knowledge of how different cultural groups prefer to interact with nature. Challenge is a lack of multi-day outdoor programs. There's funding for voluntary public access easements. The challenge could be that children do not have access to nature growing up and difficult to access as an adult. If agencies are overwhelmed and underfunded, equity loses out. See, providing funding to NGOs that are community-based and can create access programs. That school curriculum doesn't focus on California natural habitat enough. Rules that don't allow Native American cultural practices. A lack of information and awareness. Not enough public transit. Okay. So let's move on to the next question. And I do want to say, I appreciate how many great responses we got through to challenges. And as we move on to this next section on opportunities, I want to remind folks that if you're a call-in user, you can, a phone-only user, you can press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. And then if you're joining us on the browser and you're new to the room, pollev.com/kwpoll2 or text kwpoll2 to the number 22333, and that should be in the chat window as well. So this next question is on what does success look like for climate smart land management in this region? I want you to think really big, think future, think like giant big question. What does success look like? So big responses. So I see success looking like restored wetlands and forests leading to climate resilience. Seeing clean air and water. Ending unsustainable water diversions from the Eastern Sierra. And again, *9 on your phone if you'd like to respond with what success looks like for climate smart land management in the region. Communities in the Northern Mojave Desert and Great Basin that are diverse, fun, welcoming to all people. Reduced water exportation. Again, we're thinking really big, appreciating these big responses, future-oriented responses, that there's equitable access if it's success. What does success look like? There's carbon sequestration. Restore our waterways to their natural flows and capacities. Success looking like significant reduction in clear cuts. Success that tourists can travel to the region and enjoy the natural beauty while supporting local businesses. That restored wetlands and riparian corridors. There's an increased use of prescribed fires, success looking like durable conservation of wetland resources and riparian corridors. For success, coordination between public and private land uses, and that we're enduring natural working lands. So thinking future focus, I'm seeing mining law reform come through. And again, if you're a phone call-in user, *9 on your phone. And if you have a response in another language, you can also provide that response. Unmute yourself in that interpretation line as well, and we can get your response as well. The Owens Valley is green and lush with riparian habitat again. That the whole ecosystem is protected from lowlands to the alpine. There's an education of urban climate activists so they can understand it's essential to our survival. Quantified understanding of ecosystem services and benefits. So big picture, what does success look like for climate smart land management in the region? There's keystone species like tricolored blackbird to represent unique habitats. There's an equilibrium with nature and its resources. The passage of specific HR 803. That there's hedgerows, lots of healthy trees and gardens of native edible plants. Limit groundwater pumping for LADWP and agriculture, talking about our water table dropping substantially. Protection from development. Big picture success. We have climate activists are needed as eco-warriors for natural areas. That biodiversity is enhanced. As we're on this last questions here, folks, if you are having any tech questions, we have a couple people to help you as well. And so if you go, you can go in the chat and ask for tech support. Just want to let folks know that that's still there if something's happening here. And if you're a phone call-in user, you still have time. *9 on your phone, I can unmute you. We'd love to hear your response as well. Healthy and thriving watershed. What success looks like for the climate smart land management in this region. Contemporary approach to LADWP lands that hold them accountable to the health of the area. Moving beyond the bare survival of species to thriving populations. We're looking at connectivity for species to move as climates make their location unsustainable. And if you're just joining us, you can go to pollev.com/KWPoll2 to provide your response, or text KWPoll2 to 22333, and that information should be in the chat as well. Success looks like nimbleness in response to climate change. We don't know what the future will be. Success looks like increasing funding for land trusts. Reforming LADWP. That more water left as minimum flows in streams and rivers. We're thinking big picture what success looks like. That the Sierra Butte Lakes Basin open space protection as an example of what success looks like. Thank you for sending that in. That there's fewer dams and more groundwater storage. And again, *9 on your phone. If you're a phone only user, we'd love to hear your verbal response as well. The Sierra Nevada economy that prioritizes the benefits of the natural lands. That wildlife can move through conserved lands as needed to adapt to climate change impacts. I'm seeing such rich responses to what success looks like, such big picture responses to what success looks like, that historically marginalized communities are part of the solution, like the workforce. That the California Department of Fish and Wildlife doubles at its staff for the region. giving the Eastern Sierra a true voice in LADWP decisions. That city planning needs to focus on walkable cities. That there's a restoration of tribal water management practices. These are such rich responses here. I want to move us on to the next question here. And it is our final question for this afternoon and evening. And this next question is, what does success look like for 30 by 30? So what does success look like for 30 by 30? If you're a phone call-in user, *9. And if you refresh the page on your browser, you'll see the new responses coming in and the new question coming in. So success looks like equitable access to nature and its benefits. Success for 30-30, the recognition of the positive role that fishing and hunting play in conservation. That reverse human-caused climate change. Success look like for 30 by 30, that there's a healthy state for people, wildlife, and all living things. That there's measurable goals and an inclusive state process. That most threatened and endangered species get increased protection. So success for 30 for 30 looking like enduring and strong land and water conservation. A common understanding in California of what conservation means, and I know folks' response before to the definition of conservation is helpful towards that as well. The consideration of existing protected areas, a suite of real legislative recommendations that have solid research from the Assembly and the Senate, that there's biodiversity protections, that all habitats are conserved, not just the most common, that private landowners can protect natural resources, that all parts of California equally benefit from conservation. Land and waters currently available for wildlife can remain open. California sets a new standard by example for how to reduce climate change threats. And I know that Jen is here watching and reading these as they come through. I see 40 by 30, assured sustainability. So moving us beyond 30 by 30, responsible management of culturally significant areas. That all people have access to nature. So what success looks like for 30 by 30, that biodiversity is maintained throughout the state, that natural areas are restored to their pre-colonization status, that there's justice for tribal people, that eligible wild and scenic rivers and suitable wild areas receive long-term protection, that species have adaptive capacity to persist through the global climate crisis, that there's carbon neutrality, that we meet 30% protected land and ocean by 2030, that there's a public understanding of climate change and how it's affecting our state. And again, if you're a phone call-in user, *9, you can still provide input verbally as well if you need to. That we're truly meeting the goal that lands are conserved permanently. That there's a sustainable level of funding and operation of natural areas on state, federal, and private lands. That people understand and celebrate living with nature. That California citizens and natural areas are prioritized before corporate interests and profits. Success looking like clean air and clean water. Success for 30 by 30 is the restoration of healthy forests with a better mix of species and age classes. That land is conserved in urban areas as well. that citizens value and prioritize conservation, protected habitat connectivity so that migration and animal seasonal habitats are vibrant, that working lands have incentives to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that organic gardens should be around every new home in CA, not only in Sierras, that there's a protection of tribal homelands, success looking like public and private partnerships. A theme we've seen throughout is job creation and land management and education, so success looking like that happening. That people are so impressed by 30 by 30, we get to 50 by 50. That there's media coverage and coordinated messaging throughout the state. That there's long-term protection for designated areas in 30 by 30. Looking back at equity, that there's equitable representation across our conservation communities. Looking at an ecosystem scale response for the report. That there's more lands for tribes. And in the last minute or so of the response, again, if you're a call-in user, *9, we'd love to hear from you, *9, and let me know, and it will raise your hand. Sustainable funding, that tribes and indigenous communities have resources to co-manage the land. That are, oh, I've seen this one on organic gardens come through before, and there's no destruction of natural lands. Okay, so in the last couple minutes here, as we're closing this question, California bans cyanide heap leach mining, that the 1972 Mining Act is reformed. I wanted to thank everyone for joining this evening and this afternoon, evening time here. Your input is so important as part of this process. For those who joined us by phone, thank you. For those of us who joined us in language, thank you. Your input will be continued to be important as part of the process. We have a couple more workshops. We're not quite halfway through our workshops. If there's another you'd like to join as well. Ali is going to put the address for the website in the chat box as well. It's www.californianature.ca.gov to provide input on the public input questionnaire if you have more that you'd like to share with us. I'm going to turn it back over to Jen Norris to provide some final responses. And I wanted to let people know as we do that, you could also email californianature@resources.ca.gov, provide responses through the postal mail. All that information is in the chat box as well. So Jen, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Jenna. And thank you everybody who was in this room. I have really enjoyed and appreciated the diversity of responses. This is our 4th workshop, and it's so interesting to see just how different people's perspectives are across the state, which is exactly what we were hoping for, is to get these regional perspectives, really understand what matters to you. So thank you. You will hear more from us. This is the beginning of the conversation, as I said, and we really appreciate you turning out. Hope you have a great evening, everyone.
All right, and thank you, everyone. You can feel free to leave the meeting. It's now over, and you can click on Leave Meeting at the bottom of the screen. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight.